They called her out by name, and the terminal went silent. A black woman, first-class boarding pass in hand, was escorted away in front of everyone. No raised voice. No mistake in her documents. Just one quiet accusation. We've had issues with your type before. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She just looked the gate agent in the eye and smiled. Because what no one realized, not the TSA agents, not the smug supervisor, not even the CEO sipping espresso upstairs, was that the woman they just tried to humiliate didn't come here to board. She came to bury them. And the moment they tagged her as difficult, they signed their own collapse. 6 minutes after she was flagged, over $600 million vanished from HavenAir's balance sheet. For international routes, froze mid-departure. Executives locked themselves in boardrooms, and the system that thought it could erase her name began choking on hers. Still think this is just about a seat? You're not ready for what she's about to do next. What if the woman you tried to silence owned your silence? Hit that subscribe, drop a comment, and tell us, when did you realize this wasn't a story about travel? And where in the world are you watching from? Because this isn't about a boarding pass. This is about what happens when power learns how to whisper before it strikes. At precisely 6:05 a.m., the golden hue of morning poured through the vast panes of Terminal D's skylights, casting long shadows on polished marble and tired faces. Travelers moved with quiet purpose, rolling carry-ons and sipping coffee, dressed in the uniforms of business and leisure. Amidst them, a woman stood out not because she wanted to, but because the space around her seemed engineered to resist her presence. Ava Whitmore walked with deliberate grace. Tailored cream coat over slate gray trousers, suede loafers silent against the floor, a silver pendant glinting just beneath her blouse collar. She carried no entourage, no loud phone calls, no ostentatious luggage. Just a single leather carry-on, and the calm of someone who belonged anywhere she walked. She approached the HavenAir first-class check-in counter, its brass-plated sign shimmering with quiet arrogance. The man behind the desk, early 30s, blue tie too tight, eyes trained to evaluate at a glance, looked up, his brows barely lifted. "Ma'am, first class is that way," he said, gesturing to the far right, toward the economy self-service kiosks. Ava paused, not startled, not offended, just calculating. "I'm flying first class," she replied, holding up her phone. "Flight HA208, Zurich." The man's gaze skimmed the screen, then immediately shifted to the middle-aged white man approaching behind her in jeans and a windbreaker. "Sir, welcome. Checking bags today," he said, voice suddenly brighter. Ava didn't move. She stood her ground, still holding her phone. "Can you verify my boarding pass?" The agent finally reached for it, tapping half-heartedly at his screen. He muttered. Just a moment. A beat passed. Then another. Behind her, the other passenger had already been handed a drink voucher and a smile. "It looks like there may be an error on your profile," the agent said vaguely. "You may want to step aside while I sort this out." "There's no error," Ava said evenly. "I booked the ticket directly. Paid in full. Business account." "Still," he said, not looking at her, "I'll need you to wait over there. This line is for first-class priority." "I am priority," she answered. "I'm not stepping aside until you do your job." The agent finally met her eyes then, his jaw tightening slightly, that look of barely contained condescension leaking through his professional tone. "Ma'am, please don't make a scene." Scene. That word always came preloaded with assumptions, Ava thought. She'd heard it before, not in words, but in tone. Scene wasn't about volume. It was about presence in a space they didn't expect you to occupy. Still, she smiled softly, calmly, and said, "Why don't you call your supervisor?" The agent hesitated, clearly annoyed that she hadn't just melted away like an inconvenience. "Fine," he said. He tapped something into the system, and within a minute, a woman in a navy blazer approached. She glanced at Ava, then at the screen. "Boarding pass, please." Ava handed it over, again. The supervisor barely looked. "We'll need to reissue this at guest services," she said crisply. "Please follow me." The request wasn't a request. It was a command dressed as courtesy. Ava considered her options, then followed, saying nothing. They walked past rows of passengers, some already watching. She could feel the glances, curious, dismissive, a few sympathetic, but mostly confused. What's she doing in this line? The irony burned at the back of her throat. She had spent a career building a brand that no one could erase. And yet, here she was, being asked to explain her existence to a system that refused to believe her legitimacy unless it came in the form they recognized. The supervisor stopped at a side kiosk and typed something quickly. "Please verify your ID again." Ava handed it over. A beep. A pause. Then a new boarding pass printed. Same seat. 1A. Same flight. Same name. "Looks like it's cleared now," the woman said, not meeting her eyes. "You can proceed to security." No apology. No acknowledgement. Not even a trace of recognition of what had just happened. Ava took the pass, nodded once, and walked away, her gait unchanged, her face unreadable. But inside, she logged every second, every hesitation, every choice not to see her. At the TSA checkpoint, the officer was polite, almost robotic. "Global entry?" "Yes." "Pre-check?" "Also yes." He scanned the barcode. The light blinked green, then yellow, then red. "You've been flagged for standard screening," he said. "Random selection." Ava stared at him. "You're joking." "System generated," he shrugged. Behind her, two men in golf shirts breezed through, one laughing loudly. Neither was stopped. Ava was led to the manual screening lane. The agent there wore gloves and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ma'am, any electronics?" "Yes," Ava said, unzipping her bag. She laid out her tablet, her wireless keyboard, her charger, a folder labeled Confidential Whitmore Holdings. The agent picked it up. "This for business?" she asked. "Yes." "What kind of business?" "The kind where people ask too many questions," Ava replied. The woman smirked. "Just doing my job." She rifled through the folder carelessly, brushing her hands over documents without gloves. A second agent leaned in, whispering something. Ava's name, likely, or a guess at who she might be. She could see it already forming in their heads, difficult, combative, suspicious. She reassembled her things in silence and walked toward the departure concourse. Her steps never changed. But inside she was counting. Steps, microaggressions, cuts too small to scream about, but too deep to ignore. A woman passed her wearing a HavenAir employee badge. Their eyes met briefly. The woman looked away instantly. Ava reached the first-class lounge and presented her boarding pass. The scanner blinked red. "I'm sorry," said the receptionist. "It says you're not cleared for access." "That's not possible," Ava said. "Try again." The woman scanned it twice more. Nothing. "I'll need to override it manually." It took 3 tries. No apology, just a muttered, "You're good now." Inside the lounge, Ava took a seat by the window. She opened her tablet and checked her calendar. Zurich meetings, investment briefings, strategic workshops. Her presence on that flight wasn't just personal. It was financial architecture in motion. She wasn't just a passenger. She was a power shift waiting to land. And the airline? They just tried to unseat the one person who almost bought them 2 years ago. That bid didn't go through, not because she lacked capital, but because she saw something in the company's DNA, something rotting. And now it was showing itself again. Ava took a breath, steady and deep, and made a single mental note. This isn't over. But they won't see the end coming. As Ava settled into a corner of the first-class lounge, the calm was superficial, like ambient music in a burning building. Her fingers moved over her tablet screen, but her mind remained on every microfracture in the system she had just witnessed. This wasn't new, and it wasn't random. It was rehearsed, fine-tuned, quiet enough to deny and cold enough to brand. When the boarding announcement echoed faintly through the lounge, Ava stood, packed her things with measured efficiency, and exited without comment. Outside, the terminal buzzed with travelers, some rushing, some lounging, none aware of the silent battle lines being drawn around a single passenger. As she approached the main security checkpoint, her posture straight, her pace calm, a uniformed HavenAir ground agent, mid-20s, sharp vest, forced smile, intercepted her just before the TSA line. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, stepping directly into her path. "I've been asked to do a quick inspection of your carry-on before you proceed." Ava raised an eyebrow, subtle but sharp. "I'm not at the security zone yet. Why would an airline be inspecting luggage here?" The man's smile didn't shift. "Just a quick check, standard protocol." "Show me that protocol," Ava replied. The man hesitated just for a beat. "It's part of our high-security review initiative for VIP lanes," he added, tone tightening slightly. "Should only take a second." He gestured toward a table set up near the dividing stanchions. Ava glanced sideways. There was no signage, no other passengers being pulled aside, no actual TSA presence near that setup. It was too clean, too casual. And it was pointed directly at her. Still, Ava complied. Not because she believed in the process, but because she was collecting data now. As she set her leather carry-on on the table, the agent slipped a phone from his pocket and, under the guise of scanning the barcode tag, quickly angled it to snap 2 photos of the bag. Ava caught it. The quick flick of a lens, the faint shutter clicked despite his effort to mute it, and the way his thumb moved as if forwarding something instantly. Her voice cut through the low hum around them. "Did you just take a photo of my bag?" The agent blinked. "No, ma'am. Just scanning the barcode." "Then show me your gallery," she replied, voice calm but firm. He paused. "I'm not authorized to share device content." "Then you're not authorized to inspect mine," Ava shot back. A small crowd had begun to form behind her, travelers confused by the delay. The agent stepped back, mumbled something into his headset, then nodded. "You're good to proceed," he said quickly, waving her through. Ava took her bag, eyes locked on his, and walked toward the TSA checkpoint. She reached the pre-check lane, handed over her boarding pass and passport. The scanner beeped. Green, then blue, then green again. "MS. Whitmore," the officer said after glancing at his screen. "You've been randomly selected for enhanced screening." Ava tilted her head. "The system just cleared me." "Sometimes it flags after secondary scan," he replied, almost reciting. She narrowed her eyes. "I've got global entry, nexus, and pre-check. What justification triggers random in triple clearance status?" "It's not personal," he said, avoiding her gaze. "It's the algorithm." Ava smiled faintly. "Ah yes, the algorithm. The best excuse since just doing my job." The officer gestured toward the secondary screening area, where 2 agents, one male, one female, stood with gloves already on. Ava walked over, her carry-on gripped a bit tighter, her steps quiet but pointed. "Step right here," the female agent said. "Arms out, feet shoulder-width apart." Ava obeyed. The scanner passed over her once. No alert. The female agent stepped forward. "We'll begin the pat-down." It started standard, shoulders, arms, waist, but then lingered. Fingers pressed longer than necessary along her waistband. Ava flinched slightly as the agent's hand slid too close along her inner thigh. "That's enough," she said. The agent looked up. "Just completing the sweep." "You're going beyond the sweep," Ava replied. "Either you change course or I call for your supervisor." The agent hesitated, then nodded curtly, stepped back, and gestured for the male agent to check her bag. He opened it slowly, deliberately, taking out her tablet, her organizer, the same confidential folder she'd repacked earlier. He flipped it open without asking. "These business documents, they're confidential financial audits," Ava replied. "You'll want to close that before I call your legal department." The man didn't move, but a supervisor walking by caught her words, looked over, and quickly stepped in. "That's enough," he said. "She's cleared. Let's keep the line moving." Ava reassembled her things, again for the 3rd time that morning, and walked away. Her movements were calm, but the fire beneath had risen another level. She could feel it now, not suspicion, not even hostility. It was control. Someone, somewhere, was testing how far they could push before she broke. But she didn't break. She absorbed, collected, archived, and prepared. Past the checkpoint, she moved toward the corridor that led to the priority gate. Her seat, 1A, was still technically active, her presence in the system still intact. But she could feel the seams of it straining. Something was shifting behind the curtain. a network of decisions designed to unwrite her profile one code at a time. She passed another kiosk. A digital ad blinked HavenAir's signature slogan: exclusivity, elegance, elevated. She almost laughed. Just then, a notification buzzed on her tablet. Check-in status altered. Please re-verify at gate. She stopped walking, tapped open her profile. Her name was there, but her seat assignment? Gone. Just an empty space. Ava inhaled. Somewhere behind her, the ground agent with the camera had vanished, but his echo remained. And, ahead, just past the next turn, something else was waiting. Something worse. Something designed to feel inevitable. Ava's heels clicked with precision against the terminal floor as she made her way back toward the premium lounge, the static tension of the security check still buzzing faintly in her bones. Each checkpoint so far had felt like a veiled challenge, and the accumulation of resistance was beginning to feel less like coincidence and more like choreography. Her tablet screen now showed a blinking caution icon beside her name, something she had never seen before, not in over a decade of international travel. She tapped it again. It prompted her to verify check-in details, though her boarding pass had already been scanned, reissued, and cleared. She chose not to deal with the app yet, choosing instead to try the physical space first. The HavenAir first-class lounge sat behind a frosted glass enclosure like a luxury fortress, quiet jazz, golden lighting, polished chrome, and an interior smell of citrus, wood, and eucalyptus mist. A hostess stood at the entry pedestal, tall and polite in a navy skirt suit, her posture tight with practiced hospitality. Ava approached with her new boarding pass in hand, the same one that had just gotten her through TSA despite resistance, and handed it over. The scanner blinked green, then blue, then flickered red. The hostess frowned slightly, tapped the screen again, and tried to mask her confusion. "I'm sorry," she said in a voice tinged with uncertainty. "It says your access has not been approved for lounge entry." Ava didn't blink. "Try again," she said calmly. "I was just in this lounge 20 minutes ago, before heading through security. Same ticket, same ID." The woman hesitated, then tapped again, trying an override. The scanner paused, processed, and flashed red again. "It may be a back-end update," she offered carefully. "Sometimes the system resets tier access if your flight class is downgraded or not confirmed." Ava narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me? My class has not been downgraded." "It may be an error," the hostess replied, glancing nervously toward a second staff member approaching from inside the lounge. "I can call the service desk for clarification." "Don't," Ava interrupted, voice calm but unmistakably firm. "Manually override the system and grant me access. Or explain to your supervisor why you just turned away a platinum business tier client who's been flying this route longer than your system has existed." The second staffer paused mid-step, clearly having caught the tension. The hostess swallowed hard, turned back to the screen, and keyed in a manual override. The scanner buzzed again. This time it glowed white. "You may enter," she said softly. Ava took her boarding pass, nodded once without smiling, and walked in. Inside, the room hummed with soft conversation and the clink of cutlery against fine porcelain. A barista offered a polite nod from behind the espresso station. Ava walked past the reading racks and settled into a leather seat near the far window. She placed her carry-on beneath the table, unlocked her tablet, and pulled up her company's secured briefing folder for Zurich. Meetings were still set, documents were synced, and her assistant had just uploaded the latest slides for the acquisition review. But the system icon beside her itinerary flashed again, boarding pass invalid. She tapped into the airline's mobile app. The screen loaded slowly, almost like it was dragging its feet, before displaying a pop-up in bold red text. "Boarding pass error verification required. Please proceed to nearest service kiosk." Ava stared at it, letting the screen burn into her eyes, not because she was surprised, but because she wasn't. This was the next escalation, the silent one. No one had shouted at her. No one had said no, they had just quietly withdrawn access. She exited the app and restarted it. Same result. She opened her wallet app to see the digital ticket, once marked 1A, priority lane, Lounge access, now listed only Flight HA208 pending assignment. Her heart rate didn't rise. Her face didn't change. She stood slowly, packed her things again, and walked out of the lounge with the same posture she'd entered. Outside, the hostess didn't meet her eyes this time. Ava didn't stop. She made her way toward the HavenAir help desk, tucked behind the premium boarding gates. 2 reps were working the counter, one older man with thick glasses and a woman in her early 30s flipping through rebooking screens. A third hovered nearby, holding a clipboard. Ava stepped forward and waited until one of them glanced her way. "I need my boarding pass re-verified," she said. "There's been an internal error." My seat was confirmed, then disappeared from the app without reason. The woman behind the counter took her ID and scanned it. Her face barely moved. She said, scrolling. "It looks like your reservation has been adjusted. The system moved your profile to unassigned, possibly due to check-in conflict." "There was no conflict," Ava replied. "I checked in 2 hours ago. Security cleared me. Lounge scanned me. All verified. This is not procedural." "I understand," the woman said mechanically. "Unfortunately, once the manifest locks, manual reassignments are limited." "Then unlock it," Ava said flatly. "I'm not flying standby on a flight I paid 5 figures for." The woman paused, leaned slightly to whisper to the man beside her. He glanced at Ava, then at the screen. His voice was low, but clear enough to catch. "That's the one they flagged earlier, right?" The woman nodded. "Yeah. Code Z14 priority override." "Code Z14? Ava repeated. "I'd like that explained." "Now." The man looked up. "It's an internal code. Nothing serious. Just means we're required to verify certain priority statuses before boarding." Ava leaned forward, her voice velvet-coated steel. "I'm not certain who's authorizing these changes, but unless someone from executive operations signed that code themselves, I suggest you revert it immediately." "Unfortunately, that's not in our access level," the woman replied. Her tone clipped. "If you'd like, we can submit a formal escalation. Estimated response time is 36 to 72 hours." Ava stared at her. "My flight leaves in 40 minutes. "Then I'd recommend checking the kiosk at Gate C9, the man offered. "They may be able to issue you a temporary boarding document." Ava took her ID and boarding pass, now flagged with a watermark that hadn't been there before, tiny, faded, but unmistakable. "Unverified class." She walked toward Gate C9 without speaking, each step a quiet calculation. Behind her, the agents resumed typing. None of them called her back. She approached the kiosk and scanned her ID again. The screen loaded. Her name appeared, her flight number, but the seat was still blank. The button to confirm boarding was grayed out. Below it, in blinking red, "Manual review in progress. Please contact staff." Ava turned, scanning the gate area. Staff milled about, too distracted or too distant. A loudspeaker overhead called out boarding for a completely different flight. She looked down at her pass, still in hand. The name was right. The flight was right. But the access had been erased. Quietly, deliberately, like they were rewriting her in real time. She took a breath. Not in frustration. Not even in anger. In recognition. This was no longer inconvenience. This was strategy. And she needed to see how far they would go before. Ava stood motionless in front of the kiosk, the blinking red "Manual review in progress" warning like a silent siren to anyone watching. Passengers passed by without noticing, their minds occupied with gate changes, coffee orders, or the rhythm of travel fatigue. But Ava could feel it, something invisible moving behind the scenes, a slow tightening of unseen hands around her access, her presence, her identity. She turned away from the unresponsive machine and headed toward the gate counter, where 2 HavenAir attendants were adjusting manifest logs on mounted screens. "Excuse me," she said calmly, presenting her boarding pass and ID. "This is my flight. My seat has been removed without authorization. I need it reinstated immediately." The younger of the 2 attendants looked at the pass, then at the screen, then at Ava's face. He hesitated for a split second before typing something into his terminal. His eyes moved across the display, and his expression shifted, not in surprise, but recognition. "I'm going to need to call someone," he said quietly. "Please wait right here." Before Ava could respond, she felt a presence behind her. Two security personnel, both in plain black suits, earpieces in place, one male, one female, flanked her on either side. "Ms. Whitmore," the man asked. "We'd like to speak with you for a moment. Please come with us." Ava turned slowly, scanning both faces. "On what grounds?" she asked evenly. "We've been alerted to a discrepancy in your documentation," the woman said. "This will only take a minute. We need to verify your identification materials in a secure area." "A discrepancy?" Ava repeated. "My ID was cleared through TSA, my boarding pass was issued at the premium desk, and my payment credentials are on file with your airline." "Ma'am," the man interrupted, his tone firm but not hostile. "We're going to need to ask you to step aside. We can explain further in a more private space." "You can explain right here," Ava replied, not moving. "Because what you're asking me to do, without stating a reason, is unacceptable." Passengers were beginning to glance toward them now, some subtly, others more openly. The gate area wasn't full, but it was active enough that her presence between two uniformed agents stood out like a fire alarm in a library. The male agent stepped slightly closer, his voice lowering. "We've received a report suggesting potential falsification of travel documents." Ava blinked once, then laughed softly. "You're serious?" "I'm afraid we are," the woman said. "Your boarding credentials have been flagged under a code indicating possible document tampering. We have to follow protocol." Ava narrowed her eyes. "Let me see that report." "That's not something we can disclose at this stage," the man replied. "Then I'm not moving," Ava said flatly. The man nodded toward the counter. The attendant, still watching the exchange, glanced away. "Ma'am, if you refuse to cooperate," the agent continued, "we'll be required to detain you until the matter is resolved." "Detain me," Ava said, "for boarding a flight I paid for, with documentation already verified by your system." The woman stepped slightly in front of Ava. "Let's not escalate," she said. "This can be handled professionally and quickly. Please." Ava looked around the terminal. A middle-aged couple had paused near the gate display, pretending to check flight times while clearly watching her. A man in a Patagonia vest held up his phone like he was scrolling, camera aimed in her direction. The optics weren't just deliberate. They were engineered. She exhaled slowly, unclenched her fingers, and said, "Then lead the way. I want every second of this recorded." They walked past the boarding lane, away from the seating area, into a side corridor marked Authorized Access Only. As they passed the last gate agents, Ava caught one final look from the young man who had called security in the first place. It wasn't fear. It was indifference. They stopped near a secondary screening room beside the operations office. "This won't take long," the male agent said again, motioning toward a metal bench. Ava didn't sit. She stood tall, pulled out her ID, her boarding pass, and held them in front of her. "Here. Verify whatever you think you need to verify." The woman took them, examined both under a small ultraviolet scanner mounted beside the door, then cross-referenced the data on a handheld device. After 30 seconds, she handed them back. "The ID is clean. No forgery." "Of course it's clean," Ava replied. "Anything else you'd like to accuse me of?" The man shifted uncomfortably. "It appears the alert was issued in error." Ava smiled, but there was no warmth in it. An error that just happened to flag only me, in a terminal full of unsearched, unbothered passengers. "It's not personal," the woman offered. "It's protocol." "Stop saying protocol," Ava snapped. "Protocol doesn't selectively target one passenger through 4 different departments unless someone told it to." The male agent cleared his throat. "You're free to return to the gate." "Am I?" Ava asked. "Because according to your system, my seat is still missing. So tell me, where exactly should I return to?" Neither of them answered. Ava tucked her documents away, adjusted the strap on her bag, and turned to leave. As she reached the end of the corridor, the female agent called after her. "Ma'am, just some advice." Ava stopped, not turning. "If you want to avoid these types of complications in the future, Maybe consider adjusting how you present yourself. Ava turned slowly. How I present myself? We've had situations, the agent said carefully. Passengers who push back too hard tend to trigger more scrutiny. It's just how it works. Ava stared at her, expression unreadable. Then she said, maybe you should consider adjusting how you enforce your authority. The woman blinked. Ava took a single step closer and said low and clear, next time you accuse someone of forgery in public, you better be damn sure they're not in a position to rewrite your job description. She walked back toward the gate with every step more deliberate than the last, the back of her head burning with the sense that the real damage hadn't been the accusation. It had been the way everyone looked at her once it was made. She wasn't a passenger anymore. She was a suspect who hadn't yet proven her innocence to a machine built to deny it. When she arrived at the boarding area, her name was no longer on the display. Not under first class. Not under standby. Not anywhere. Ava returned to the gate not as a traveler, but as someone marked, like a misplaced item in a system that no longer recognized her barcode. The boarding area for flight HA208 had begun to fill with passengers, couples comparing itineraries, executives typing rapidly on tablets, families herding children toward snacks and chargers. No one paid her direct attention now, yet every movement around her seemed more intentional, more staged, as if the people who had watched her be escorted away were pretending it had never happened. She stepped toward the gate desk again, holding her boarding pass, which still read unverified class, and asked calmly, has my seat been reassigned yet? The agent at the counter, a young woman with bright lipstick and eyes that refused to meet Ava's, tapped a few keys and said, still pending, ma'am. We're working through it. Working through what exactly? Ava asked. I was just detained, accused of document forgery, and still haven't received a formal explanation for my removal. I'd like the record corrected and my seat restored. The woman hesitated, glanced at a second attendant standing beside her, then replied without emotion, all I can do is flag your file again. Maybe it'll clear this time. Ava didn't respond. She stepped back from the counter, parked herself in one of the nearby seats, and pulled out her phone to review her travel records. But even before she could unlock it, she heard the low murmur of voices to her left. Is that the same one? Someone whispered. Yup, came the reply. Got pulled out earlier. One of those high-drama types. They always come in thinking they own the place. Ava turned her head just enough to see two employees in black HavenAir vests chatting behind the service kiosk, unaware or uncaring that their voices were carrying. Keep your eye on her, one added. Heard she already triggered 3 flags in the system. Probably another problem passenger trying to go viral. The other laughed lightly. They love to make noise, don't they? Ava stood up, walked slowly toward them, and simply said, if you're going to slander someone, at least make sure they're out of earshot. Or better yet, read the definition of defamation first. The two froze, expressions caught between guilt and disdain. Neither apologized. One of them muttered, just repeating what I heard from operations. Then operations needs retraining, Ava replied. And you need to rethink what kind of professional you want to be. She returned to her seat, the burn in her chest not rage, but calculation. This wasn't personal vendetta. It was systemic strategy. Label. Marginalize. Discredit. Make her presence synonymous with disruption. Then use that narrative to justify further denial. She tapped her phone, opened her profile, and saw the newest update. Her reservation now listed as discretionary hold priority evaluation pending. Another meaningless phrase. Another layer of digital exile. 30 minutes passed. Boarding for Group 1 began. A cart rolled by offering water bottles and box snacks. Ava waited. The attendant, a man in his early 20s with neatly combed hair and an over-practiced smile, stopped beside the couple 2 rows ahead of her. Still or sparkling? He asked. Sparkling, the woman replied. Lemon if you have it. The cart moved to the next row. Still no acknowledgement of Ava. She lifted her hand slightly. Excuse me, she said politely. May I have a bottle of water? The attendant stopped, looked at her, then back at his clipboard. Name. Ava Whitmore, she said. He scanned his list, faked a frown. I'm not seeing you on the priority roster. Water doesn't require priority, Ava replied, her voice low and measured. It's basic service. We've been asked to limit distribution to cleared guests only, he answered. There have been some behavioral alerts today. The system's flagged a few passengers. Ava stared at him, letting the silence hold. Are you implying I've been flagged as a security threat? I didn't say that, he replied quickly. Just that management advised caution around profiles with unverified compliance history. And how exactly does one receive that label, she asked. Because I've been accused without proof, blocked without notice. And now I can't get a bottle of water because of your internal whispers? The man shifted uncomfortably. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm just doing what I was told. Then remember this moment, Ava said, her tone freezing. Because one day you'll be asked what you did when protocol became prejudice. The cart rolled on without another word. Behind her, a man in business casual leaned toward his wife and muttered, "Always a scene, huh?" The woman didn't respond. Ava sat still, spine straight, expression blank, but inside the walls were shifting. This wasn't a matter of inconvenience anymore. It was a calculated campaign to erode her position until she no longer looked like a customer, but a liability. A message buzzed on her tablet from her assistant. Zurich legal team confirmed. Slides finalized. Expecting you in briefing room by 6 p.m. local time. Ava stared at the message for a long second. She was no longer certain she'd make it out of the terminal, let alone across the Atlantic. Her boarding access was vapor. Her seat was memory. Her credibility, to these people, was nothing but a red mark on a screen. She stood again, walked to the gate kiosk to check for manual overrides. The screen froze halfway through her scan, then printed a stub that read, "Boarding pending. Hold code 37 B guest behavior evaluation." She read it twice. Hold code 37B. That wasn't an error. That was a choice. Her name wasn't Ava Whitmore anymore. It was a problem report waiting to be filed. Ava stared at the kiosk printout in her hand. The cold precision of the phrase, "Hold code 37 B guest behavior evaluation," sinking into her gut like a hook. The air around her felt different now, not just heavy with tension, but manipulated, programmed to repulse her without a trace of physical resistance. She walked slowly back toward the gate area, aware of how carefully her presence was being observed without anyone admitting it. The boarding process had begun, moving into Group 2, the LED display cycling through passenger tiers, Platinum Elite, Business First, Executive Flex. Her name wasn't listed anywhere. She pulled out her hard-copy boarding pass, originally printed and signed at the first-class check-in desk just hours ago, crisp, with Seat 1A marked clearly beneath the bold typeface of Priority Access. She walked toward the podium, holding it level with the gate agent scanner. "I'd like to board," she said. "This is my flight." The agent took the pass without looking at her, scanned it, and frowned. The screen didn't beep. It didn't blink red. It simply did nothing. He tried again. Still blank. "One moment," he said, and turned to the other attendant behind the counter. The two whispered, glanced toward her, and then resumed typing. After 30 seconds, the second attendant looked up and said, "MS. Whitmore." Ava nodded. "That's me. Can you please step aside for a moment? We've just received a gate-level update." "What kind of update?" Ava asked, her tone flat. "Your seat has been reassigned," the woman said, not blinking. Ava didn't move. "Reassigned to whom?" "A Platinum Sponsor tier guest," the woman replied. "The system automatically prioritizes those profiles under our upgraded recognition model." "That's my seat," Ava repeated. "Assigned to me at purchase. Cleared twice today. I have the original boarding pass." "I understand," the agent said with rehearsed empathy. "But the manifest no longer reflects your assignment." "Then I want to know who made that change." "I'm afraid we can't disclose other passenger information," the man interjected. "That violates privacy protocol." Ava held her boarding pass up. "This is not a suggestion. I have documentation. Your system removed me without consent, without notification, and now you're telling me my place was sold out from under me." "The system recalibrates based on priority ranking," the woman repeated like a robot. "You've been moved to the reassessment queue. That means we'll do our best to find you another available seat once final standby is resolved." "I'm not standby," Ava said sharply. "I paid for this seat in full. I'm a top-tier client." "Not according to this," the man said, tapping his screen. "Your profile was updated at 1347. Status changed to priority under review." "Under review? By whom?" "We don't have that visibility." "Then get someone who does." Passengers behind her were now watching, some subtly, others directly. A man in a fitted blazer cleared his throat as if urging the line forward. Ava stepped back, not because she was finished, but because she knew escalation at this exact moment would be used against her. She returned to her seat, pulled out her tablet, and reopened her reservation via the airline's mobile app. The reservation was still active, but her seat designation now read: no number, no class, no boarding group, just a blank space where her presence used to be. She refreshed again. Same result. She opened her travel profile settings. Loyalty tier, blank. Lounge access, revoked. Flag status, yes. Notes, see code 37B, escalation pending approval. Ava took a slow breath, then locked the screen. Her identity as a high-tier traveler had been erased without a single conversation. Digitally, she no longer existed as someone who mattered. A nearby staff member began calling out passenger names over the intercom. "Mr. Cameron Stokes, please approach the counter." "Mrs. Evelyn Darnell, you're now cleared for boarding." "Mr. Javier Ortiz, your upgrade request has been approved." Then came a pause. A flicker of static. "MS. Ava Whitmore." Ava stood and approached. The same agent who had denied her seat looked up and spoke softly, but with a tone that reeked of finality. "MS. Whitmore, we're unable to accommodate your original seat assignment. Your profile triggered a compliance hold earlier this afternoon, and the seat has since been allocated to a senior-tier executive who arrived with override clearance. We apologize for any inconvenience." "Override clearance?" Ava asked. "What executive?" "Ma'am, please understand. These decisions are algorithmically driven, based on real-time priority assessment. You expect me to believe this is a machine's decision. We don't control the priority matrix at the gate level." Ava stepped back slowly, her mind processing the entire string of events. Flagged for secondary screening, accused of forgery, denied lounge entry, refused basic services, removed from the manifest, erased from boarding status, and now replaced, without warning, by someone deemed more worthy by an invisible system. She looked around the terminal, noting the subtle shift in posture from the staff. She was now radioactive, a disruption. The woman who didn't fit, didn't fold, didn't go away quietly. And in a place built on flow, passengers like her were treated like clogs in the pipeline. One of the staffers leaned toward another and whispered, "Why doesn't she just take the rebooking?" The other replied, "People like her think they can control everything." Ava heard it, every word. She turned and walked away without speaking. She didn't sit again. She stood against the column near the far side of the gate, away from the crowd, but still within line of sight. She wasn't just removed. She was being watched now, for compliance, for temperament, for failure. The message was clear. She wasn't flying first class today. She wasn't flying at all. She was being purged in real time, and all anyone would see on the surface was a quiet woman waiting near a gate that no longer had her name. Ava remained by the far column, her coat draped neatly over one arm, her tablet tucked under the other, appearing calm to the untrained eye, but seething with surgical precision beneath the surface. She stared at the departure board as though it still had something to offer her. Though she knew better now. Her seat was gone. Her name was invisible. Her value had been redacted from the system. It was no longer about inconvenience or inefficiency. It was calculated erasure. And in the sterile, humming void of that terminal, something deeper awakened inside her, not anger, not despair, but decision. Her phone buzzed not with a chime or a ringtone, but with the silent vibration of an encrypted line, a protocol call, not meant for conversation, only for confirmation. She stepped one pace to the left, enough to separate herself from the flow of passengers, but not far enough to draw suspicion, then answered with a quiet, "This is Whitmore." The voice on the other end was low and modulated, genderless and precise. "Alpha for authorization requested. Confirm engagement parameters." Ava's reply was steady. "Target, HavenAir. Scope, Phase 1. Full containment. Initiate on my mark." The line went silent for half a beat, then responded, "Understood." Standing by, Ava's gaze moved across the boarding area. The agents behind the counter continued processing other passengers like nothing was wrong. The man now sitting in seat 1A was sipping espresso from a branded cup, oblivious to the ripple effect his unauthorized upgrade had triggered. She tapped her screen twice, opened a restricted app known only to 5 people in her entire investment firm, and input a 6-character alphanumeric code, VXD3L9. The screen asked for biometric confirmation. She scanned her fingerprint. Instantly, the interface dissolved into a secured transmission window and replied with a single line, "Alpha, for activated 3 minutes and 27 seconds until blackout." Across the terminal, the first flicker began not in the lights, but in the internal control systems. Gate monitors refreshed with a delay. Baggage routing indicators began looping on the staff handhelds. One ground agent tapped her screen 3 times before realizing it wasn't responding. Another turned toward her supervisor, confused. Ava moved through the crowd like a ghost, silent and unseen, walking toward a pillar with a clearer line of sight to the operations hub. Her phone vibrated again. A text-only confirmation blinked onto the screen. Initial block executed, gate 12, 14, 18 manifest access restricted. Boarding re-verification offline. She knew what came next. These weren't just tech glitches. This was a systems-level decoupling of HavenAir's priority infrastructure from the airport's central operations. All access to internal seat maps, upgrade rosters, and security flags was now delayed by as much as 7 minutes. And in an environment where seconds mattered, that delay was a blade across the throat of control. The supervisor at the gate counter picked up a radio. "Ops, we've got some lag on our manifest screen. Passenger data's freezing mid-update." Silence, then static. "Ops, do you copy?" The line crackled. Nothing came through. Another attendant tried a backup terminal. It rebooted twice, then displayed a gray splash screen with red text, "System access, suspended clearance required." Ava didn't smile, but her pulse slowed. The breach was behaving exactly as designed. Strategic, not destructive. Surgical, not chaotic. This wasn't sabotage. It was leverage, controlled, measured, and invisible to the public. She sat down at a new bench, away from the crowds, and opened a secondary device, a sleek, black mini-tablet linked to the offshore investment portfolio her firm maintained for high-leverage operations. The UI displayed a real-time feed of corporate infrastructure for 3 entities: HavenAir, Orion Holdings, its parent group, and Zenith Ground Services, its logistics contractor. A red notification pulsed next to HavenAir's Financial Stability Index. Transaction flow irregular. Investor pull detected. Stand by for analysis. She tapped once. A side window opened, displaying the triggered clause from a dormant agreement. Clause 17.3 Ethical Interference Protocol. In the event of verifiable abuse, discrimination, or sabotage against a verified partner or stakeholder, all contingent capital agreements are subject to immediate withdrawal without prior notice. That clause was inserted by Ava herself when she drafted the failed acquisition contract with HavenAir 2 years ago. She had seen their boardroom culture, sensed the rot beneath the polish, and planted fail-safes like this one not out of paranoia, but anticipation. The deal never went through, but the clause remained attached to investment shadows, hidden behind shell entities that still held leverage. Until now, no one had dared trigger it, but HavenAir had just pushed the right woman too far. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Geneva HQ. Confirmation: $94 million withdrawal initiated across 3 tranches. Clause 17.3 verified. Legal audit pending. Ava locked the screen. 3 terminals across the gate corridor dimmed slightly, then reset. The HavenAir logo momentarily vanished from the boarding displays, replaced with a neutral airport system message. Technical sync delay, please stand by. A gate agent picked up the radio again, now more urgent. Central, we've got multiple sync failures. Are we under a cyber alert? The reply finally came back, garbled and hesitant. Working. Problem from higher up. Not localized. What do you mean not localized? The agent pressed. It's not just your gate. Entire HavenAir systems locking out. Ava stood again, slow and deliberate. Her presence no longer felt like resistance. It was becoming gravity. Around her, the digital infrastructure of the airline that tried to erase her had begun to turn on itself, one loop at a time. And she hadn't raised her voice once. As the monitors continued to flicker and the boarding system struggled to maintain connection with HavenAir servers, Ava stepped forward, bypassing the still chaotic gate desk, without glancing at the stunned attendants scrambling to reboot their terminals. Her presence felt foreign to the environment now, not because she was out of place, but because she had surpassed it. Each stride she took echoed differently. No longer that of a passenger fighting to be recognized, but of an entity reclaiming the silence that had tried to erase her. She walked toward the operations suite positioned at the edge of the concourse, where high-level customer relations and executive liaisons typically monitored high-profile boarding or responded to elite clients with custom requests. No one stopped her as she crossed the invisible threshold. The staff inside the glass-fronted room were too preoccupied with frozen dashboards, phone lines blinking red, and sudden drop-offs in operational connectivity. One of them, a tall man with a supervisor badge and a crisp gray tie, looked up as Ava entered and said instinctively, "Ma'am, this area is for internal staff only." But the words died mid-sentence when she held up a sealed crimson envelope marked with the HavenAir executive crest in gold foil. "I need this delivered immediately to Leonard Westbrook, VP of International Operations," she said without raising her voice. The man blinked, visibly thrown. "I'm sorry, what is this regarding?" Ava stepped closer, her gaze direct but devoid of emotion. "Tell him it's from Ava Whitmore. 2 years ago, I nearly purchased 40% of his company. I didn't. And today, I've decided I won't be saving it either." She held the envelope between 2 fingers. The man hesitated, clearly unsure whether to escalate, challenge her, or simply comply. Ava leaned in, her voice velvet and steel. "In that folder are audit logs, investor documentation, and clause violation notices that activate the full withdrawal protocol under dormant equity safeguards. You have 3 minutes before it gets routed to your board of directors directly." The man took the envelope, still visibly stunned, and moved quickly toward the secured conference space beyond the office suite. Ava didn't follow. She didn't need to. She turned and walked back toward the main terminal, each step echoing the shift she had just set in motion. 3 levels above, in HavenAir's corporate executive wing, Leonard Westbrook's personal assistant handed him the envelope with a single sentence. "You need to see this now." He opened the seal, unfolded the documents, and skimmed the cover page. His face changed before he reached the second paragraph. Before he could process the content fully, his desk phone rang, an internal priority line that bypassed reception. "This is Westbrook," he answered. The voice on the other end was clipped, official. "Mr. Westbrook, this is Agent Carrington from the Securities and Exchange Commission. I'm calling to notify you that we've received confirmation from Whitmore Holdings of a mass divestment event affecting all strategic HavenAir positions. Over $600 million US dollars in structured equity has been liquidated within the past 5 minutes. The withdrawal clause filed under Protocol 17.3 has been verified and logged. This action triggers mandatory investigation into internal behavior practices due to linked ethical and compliance stipulations in the contract terms." Leonard stood up, almost knocking over his chair. "That's not possible," he said. "We haven't received a termination notice. You are not required to." The agent interrupted. Clause 17.3 overrides disclosure if behavioral interference is substantiated. And judging from the footage, digital trails, and documentation, MS. Whitmore submitted, "It is." "What footage?" Leonard asked. "I haven't seen." "You will," the agent replied. "In approximately 7 minutes, we will be forwarding the packet to your legal counsel and corporate partners. In the meantime, prepare a preliminary internal response. Your board is going to need it." Leonard ended the call with his hand trembling. His team, already alert to the technical issues, looked to him now for answers. But he had none. Across the room, one of the analysts monitoring operational impact turned and said, "Sir, Zurich just sent notice. Our Eastern European investment partners have frozen negotiations until further notice." They cited a compliance event triggered by Whitmore protocol. Leonard didn't reply. He sat down slowly, eyes fixed on the open folder in front of him. The cover page was printed in heavy, uncoded stock. The title read, "HavenAir Conduct Violations Timeline and Triggered Consequences." Back in the terminal, Ava received a new notification on her secondary device. It was a cascade log from her legal and financial team. The screen displayed the following updates in rapid sequence. Phase 1 executed. All contract clauses activated. Public audit countdown initiated. Internal escalation triggered. Regulatory disclosure window, 17 minutes. She didn't react. Not visibly. Around her, passengers continued boarding other flights, most unaware of the shift in energy rippling across the structure that held the gate network together. But those closest to HavenAir felt it. The delay notices started updating more slowly. System screens stalled mid-scroll. Ground crew stopped receiving routing updates. A PR team member walked briskly past, holding a phone and muttering, "Something's wrong. Zurich's freaking out. They're saying we've lost anchor equity status." The air was changing, not just because of technical interference or financial chaos, but because somewhere inside the corporate machine, a truth had been exposed. Ava Whitmore wasn't just another angry customer. She was a decision maker, a structural force. And the very thing HavenAir had tried to erase with procedural malice and coded flags was the same force now dismantling its foundation in real time. Ava took a seat near the window again, far from the gate, where the light broke through the terminal's high glass in clean lines. Her tablet buzzed once more. A message from her Zurich contact. Board review requested. 3 regions affected. Westbrook notified. Awaiting response. She didn't answer. She simply opened her portfolio window and watched as the stock value for HavenAir Holdings dropped by 4.3% within 10 minutes. The ripple that Ava had triggered moved faster than Trent Collins could comprehend, and by the time his terminal at gate C12 went completely dark, he was still operating under the assumption that this was a systems glitch, an IT hiccup, a minor ops-level hiccup that would correct itself within minutes. He barked vague instructions at his team to maintain boarding discipline and hold unverified profiles, all while tapping frantically into the override console that had stopped responding entirely. Passengers were still flowing in for other flights, but Flight HA208 had entered an unusual status. Live manifest suspended, gate lock cycling, no final clearance transmitted. Trent picked up his radio and dialed the internal emergency operations channel. Static. No response. He tapped his earpiece and called for concourse command. "This is Supervisor Collins requesting a gate-level reset authorization for C12. Manifest lock, system delay, potential breach. Immediate action requested." The voice on the other end wasn't one he recognized. "Collins, report to boardroom 0. Now." He paused. "I'm in the middle of an ops delay. I need this cleared. Now," the voice repeated. Then the line went dead. Trent's jaw clenched as he handed off the gate to his assistant and made his way down the concourse. Boardroom 0 wasn't part of the public-facing infrastructure. It was a disciplinary suite built into the administrative underbelly of the terminal, where HR crises, protocol violations, and legal escalations were assessed before external exposure. Most employees didn't even know it existed. If you were called there, you didn't ask why. You already knew. Trent arrived at the door, a matte gray slab marked "Only" with a security code pad. It buzzed and opened the moment he approached, revealing a cold, windowless room with a steel table, a mounted display screen, and 3 individuals seated across from the single chair waiting for him. One was from HR. One wore a badge labeled legal oversight. The third was someone he didn't recognize but instinctively understood. Crisis containment, brought in only when the company was bleeding. He sat down slowly, still trying to control the narrative. There's been a system failure, he said. Flight manifest for HA208 glitched. A profile was flagged. We're aware of the flag, the woman from legal said, cutting him off. And of the override you executed under Code 37C, without clearance. It was discretionary, Trent said. Guest behavior raised concerns, and I used judgment as trained. Let's be precise, the HR rep interjected. You flagged a first-class passenger, stripped their privileges, reclassified their status without due process, and instructed staff to deny basic services. All within a 3-hour window. Do you deny this? Trent shook his head. I acted based on the intel I had. I followed precedent. The third figure finally spoke. The passenger's name was Ava Whitmore. You know who she is now. Trent's lips parted, then closed again. She caused disruptions, escalated at the lounge desk, pushed back on screening, refused redirection orders. The screen flickered to life above the table. Let's review, the woman from legal said. What followed wasn't speculation. It wasn't second-hand reports. It was footage, time-stamped, unbroken. Security camera angles from multiple checkpoints. Ava standing quietly at the check-in counter while being dismissed. Ava being redirected by TSA despite a clean scan. Ava being stopped for water. Ava being whispered about by 2 staffers. Ava being removed from the manifest without conversation. Ava being escorted down a corridor, expression composed, while others watched. Then finally audio overlays, Trent's voice instructing his team to tag her early, warning that she might be one of those, followed by his direct command to replace her seat with a preferred sponsor. We've extracted over 40 minutes of uninterrupted surveillance, the legal officer said. It paints a full procedural timeline, and it exposes targeted, repeated misconduct. Trent leaned forward, sweating now. I was just doing my job. Your job doesn't include falsifying threat assessments, the HR rep snapped, or bypassing ticketing logic to replace protected seats. You weaponized your discretion. This is being taken out of context, he began, but the screen changed again. This time, it was a phone recording. A passenger seated across from gate C12, quietly filming Ava's removal. A subtitle overlay had been added, syncing audio to visible moments. It had already been posted. It had already been shared. And on the bottom corner of the frame, one hashtag burned in bright, unignorable white. Hashtag #FlyWhaleBlack. This video is currently at 2.3 million views, the crisis manager said. News outlets are requesting comment. The Department of Transportation has issued an inquiry. And you become the face of procedural racism in aviation, Mr. Collins. Trent swallowed hard. You can't put this all on me. You gave the orders. You set the tone. And you signed the override that removed a strategic investor from her confirmed seat. She didn't identify herself, he snapped. How was I supposed to know who she was? It was never about who she was, the woman from legal said. It was about how you treated her. Back in the terminal, the news had begun to spread. Passengers were whispering near their gates, phones open to trending clips. A new internal bulletin flashed across all HavenAir terminals. Immediate system lock priority access, restricted admin clearance required. Staff were instructed to stand down on all discretionary decisions. Ava, still seated in the same bench she had claimed an hour earlier, received a final encrypted update on her tablet. Her legal team had filed the audit bundle with the DOT. The PR agency had forwarded a non-negotiable terms notice to the airline spokesperson, public apology, resignation acceptance, and structural review to be released within 48 hours, or risk a broader investor cascade. The morning after the incident, HavenAir's official website went dark for 2 full hours. The homepage replaced with a single message reading service under review standby for official statement. Within that time frame, for major international routes were suspended by the Department of Transportation, Zurich, Dubai, Sao Paulo, and Singapore, citing active investigations into compliance violations, discriminatory flagging procedures, and breach of passenger rights agreements. At the corporate headquarters, a hastily prepared press team gathered in a sterile media room, cameras rolling, but no branded backdrop behind them. A middle-aged woman in a charcoal blazer stepped up to the podium, clearly not the usual face of HavenAir's communications. She looked directly into the lens and began reading. On behalf of HavenAir and its executive board, we acknowledge and accept full responsibility for the events that transpired at Terminal C involving Ms. Ava Whitmore. We confirm that her treatment constituted a violation of our stated ethics, our policies, and the standards we are expected to uphold as a global transportation brand. We apologize publicly, unequivocally, and with deep regret. She paused. Effective immediately, disciplinary actions have been initiated, and we are cooperating fully with federal oversight agencies. Our systems are undergoing a mandatory audit. Leadership restructuring will begin within 72 hours. The stream ended abruptly, no questions taken. Within minutes, the clip was shared across media platforms, quoted, memed, dissected. But the woman at the center of it all never responded. Ava had already left the concourse. No security escort, no press trail, no entourage. She declined every request for an interview. She did not attend the investor roundtable that now bore her name. She didn't issue a personal statement, nor did she correct the headlines that called her everything from billionaire whistleblower to corporate assassin. She simply gathered her things, adjusted the lapel of her coat, and walked out of Terminal C before the first camera crew even arrived. But she did leave one message. Just one. On her way out, she stopped briefly beside the digital customer feedback kiosk tucked near the exit. Normally, it displayed smiley faces and short surveys. But now it had been overridden, quietly, surgically, with 6 words glowing in stark white against a black screen. I don't need to fly with you. I just need to make sure no one else gets pulled down the way I did. It wasn't signed. It didn't have to be. Employees who passed that terminal later would stop, pause, and reread the words as if they had been carved into steel. Some looked away. Others nodded silently. The kiosk froze minutes later, auto-locked by HavenAir's central system, but someone took a photo. That image went viral faster than the apology. Hashtag no one else trended globally within hours. From behind the glass of her car as it pulled away from the terminal, Ava didn't look back. Her driver asked softly, "Ma'am, would you like the fastest route to the downtown helipad?" Ava nodded. "Yes." Then straight to Zurich. "I'm not missing that meeting." The car turned out of the departure loop. The early morning sun reflecting off the windshield like a quiet spotlight, catching the edges of her silhouette as she faded into motion once more, not as a victim, not even as a victor, but as something more enduring, a force, an answer. In the weeks that followed, airlines across the country scrambled to revise their internal bias protocols. TSA announced the addition of external auditors to monitor random screening practices. HavenAir's competitor released a commercial with a pointed message. Dignity doesn't come with a boarding pass. It comes with how we treat you before you sit down. But Ava was done watching. She returned to work, resumed board meetings, negotiated deals, and funded new advocacy initiatives under a foundation that didn't bear her name, but bore her fingerprints in every clause. Her silence was never surrender. It had always been strategy. Behind the curtain of corporate collapse, her team finalized their full divestment from not just HavenAir, but every carrier on their at-risk registry. They redirected over $200 million into a coalition focused on civil mobility, legal defense for victims of transit discrimination, and AI bias reform within transportation systems. When asked privately by one of her board peers why she hadn't leveraged the scandal for more public gain, Ava simply replied, "That would have centered me. This was never about me. This was about how easily the system forgets who it's supposed to serve the moment you stop smiling and start asking questions." Somewhere in an airport days later, a young black woman in line for security was pulled aside for a random screening. As the agent scanned her ID, his system froze briefly, then displayed a flashing advisory. Protected profile, do not reclassify, without authorization. He blinked. "Ma'am, looks like your profile's got a lock tag." You're clear. No screening needed. She walked through, without delay, and though she didn't know why or who or how, she knew that someone had been here before her and made sure her name couldn't be erased. If this story made you pause, made you feel something, or made you think twice about what real power looks like, don't just scroll. Hit that subscribe button to stay with us for more stories that challenge the systems we take for granted. What moment hit you the hardest? Was it the silence, the humiliation, or the moment she turned the system against itself? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. And tell us, where in the world are you watching from right now?